Is going slower than normal. All right, cool. Now we are live. So
Oh,
this
wow.
is another random Brandon goes live on LinkedIn and his other platforms video chats. Today I have with me a different guest, Madison, and I don't want to butcher your last name.
That's okay. Mobley, Madison Mobley.
I was going to say Mobley, so I definitely would have butchered it. So I'm glad that I asked. Sad that I didn't ask in the last 20 minutes that we were chatting. All right, I found myself on LinkedIn.
Brandon, you know what's funny though?
There
So
we go.
I have a first cousin who says that his last name is Mobley. And I don't know if that means we're problematic or if we so I respond to both because clearly we can't even get it right. Like,
Yeah, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. But it looks like we're up on LinkedIn too, which is great. So if you ever see me looking to the side, it's not that I'm not paying attention to just if someone comments or whatever, I want to make sure we get a chance to respond. But with us not having interacted before, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself, talk to us a little bit about what you do. And then we can get into some of the topics that we want to chat about today around procurements. We've just been talking for the last 20 minutes, making fun of a lot of LinkedIn posts. So we'll probably get into a little bit of that as well.
Okay, cool. So I am Madison Mobley. I'm currently a senior account executive at Fair Market. Fair Market is the intelligent sourcing platform. We automate the way organizations buy stuff. It doesn't matter what the stuff is. That's the most succinct way that I can put it. And I've been there since the end of March. So pretty new to the procurement space, I'll say, but I've had a good time while being here. So we'll see how long it lasts.
Nice. And you got to start your brand new job during the pandemic, which I'm sure made it even more exciting.
Oh, it did. And a few people have heard my rants on this because I've always been someone who has believed in the power of working from home and minding your business while at home.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny because pre-COVID, there were a lot of organizations that were adamant about in-office environments, the importance of the in-office culture. And as soon as COVID laid it down, all of a sudden we figured out how to be productive from wherever we are. And so I think while the circumstances aren't the most positive, I do like that we're rethinking the future of work as it pertains to like where everyone can and can't be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I definitely agree. And I look at it to be, my hope is that there will be this new kind of blended model. And I saw a really interesting article. It's been a couple of weeks ago now where the author was talking about instead of doing like we had in the past where you would do an offsite, like
right.
you would team offsite, now it's going to be like in office, right? So if you need to do something important, rather than taking that offsite once a month or every couple of weeks, you just bring people in the office and you have a conversation with them there, and it becomes a way to still get together in person and do those things. So yeah, it's great that it's not great that this happened, but I think it's great for work. I also think it's great for school. With my son being in school and stuff, I think it's forced us to rethink how we're going to do education and a lot of other things to adapt and maybe use technologies in ways that we weren't before. So
I agree. And I think we're now forced to think about work environments more inclusively because I've been in sales my whole career, right? And there's a stereotype that folks have about salespeople. We're type A, we're go, go, go. Yeah, that might be true, but I can't be around people all day. I cannot people all day.
Yeah.
And I told this to my mom because I remember when I first got into sales at EMC, this was my first job out of college. When you're on the phone all day, you're cold calling, you're sliding in the DMs, you're sending people emails, you're writing strategic cadences. I've done my peopling for the day. I don't then want to call up a friend and see how they're doing. I don't want to do that. So there's parts of the work from home or work from wherever culture now that I personally thrive in because I need my me time too. I can be type A, but I also can be type I'm gonna see you over there because I need space. So that's where I'm at with it. I'm living my best life right now.
Yeah, I like it. That's good. That's good. I think for me is I like the mix because I'm remote, but also I could travel to locations. And so if I would travel to a location and get my people time for a week, week and a half, whatever, and then be remote the rest of the time, it was a really good balance for me. Right now I have 0 people time, which I think I'm going a little crazy. Started doing some woodworking in my garage. Never done that in my life before, but hey, like what else have you got going on? Right. So on that, I want to touch a little bit on, I think the way that we met was on via a LinkedIn post. I think you posted something that I commented on, and it was just more just in the fact that it was very real. I wish I could remember the post. I should have went and found it. But the sad thing that I'm noticing about LinkedIn, and I think you would agree, is that we're seeing so much just garbage entering the platform and a lot of weird reuse. Like I've seen people in the stream literally post the exact same story. Like, oh, I interviewed somebody yesterday and this happened, or I called somebody and this happened. And like, it's word for word, line for line, letter for letter. And it sucks because based on all the posts I've seen you make, a lot of the posts that I make, I think would be described as very, very real and we're not really holding a whole lot back. We're not sugarcoating a whole lot of shit because that's just not who we are. Right. And so that's why it was nice that we could chat. But I don't know if you had anything more to add to that, just around LinkedIn in general and the sadness that I'm seeing.
So here's what I'll say. So and I've talked to a few people about this. I had no LinkedIn presence prior to joining Fair Market. Let me think. When I was at EMC, I definitely was known to run like LinkedIn experiments. This is when the platform was significantly younger than it is right now. But as far as like the last 4 or 5 years, I wasn't too much on LinkedIn. But you take into account now the pandemic era, and you've got folks at home. People are trying to rethink how they provide value to their target audiences. How do they continue to have conversations? So now all of a sudden in March, I go in to update my LinkedIn to say I've joined Fair Market, and LinkedIn's kind of popping now. You know, people are talking, people are doing stuff. But to your point, I think there are still opportunities to say, okay, maybe I need to think more deeply about who I am and who I do and don't want to be as it pertains to my LinkedIn persona.
Yeah.
I do see a lot of, I really want to post and get this content out because I feel like that's what my audience is asking for, when I don't actually think that's what we're asking for. I think if I post once a year, I'm good with that. Just know that one time I post, I'm going to drop some heat because I thought about it. And it's something that I'm really feeling in my gut at that particular time. Like, no, I didn't get it from somewhere. I didn't package it. I didn't resell it. And I think that's what folks are still trying to figure out in some cases.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough.
It is. It's one of those things too that for me, it tends to evolve around what I've read recently and whether I have an agreement or harshness against it. And that's usually where I start to post. Like I just recently finished this book, 9 Lies About Work.
Ooh.
And it's really great. I forget which number lie it is. I don't know if it's number 9, where they say leadership is a thing. And I'm just like, my life, I feel, has been all about leadership forever. And I always felt that leadership was a thing in a sense of, if you're a leader, you have these characteristics. Like you have empathy, you have integrity, you have all this stuff. And in the chapter, they're just like, that's bullshit. That's not a thing, because it's not a metric, right? Because you could be full of empathy and have 0 integrity and still be a leader, because a leader is counted based on if you have followers or not. And so a lot of what I've been doing on LinkedIn lately is when I find these posts where people talk about leadership, they're like, oh, you have to have empathy, or you have to have this, or they show pictures of like a manager versus a leader. Like, no. A manager is a title. A leader is something that you are. And if you're a leader, you have followers, but you can be a manager and have people that report to you, and it's a completely different thing. And so most of my posts recently have been ranting on that topic, to where people are like, oh, you have to have integrity. Well, you don't. And the example they gave in the book is really interesting around Steve Jobs, where he bought a new car every 6 months. So he didn't have to register it, so he could park in handicap spots without getting in trouble. Yeah, because the car was so they could give him tickets, and then never knew where to put the ticket, and he would just park. And so it was just this thing, and they're like, "Oh, well, leaders must have integrity." Well, how is that integrity? Like that you're taking up a handicap spot that you don't need.
I did not know that.
Yeah. But even think about like Elon Musk, even, right? Like I would consider him a leader. He's visionary. He's really cool. But some of the stuff he's posted on Twitter and some other things about COVID and some other stuff like that, like you could consider that not of integrity or not of, sound mind in a sense, or the way that he treated his employees through it, like some of these things. And so there's a balance in how leadership happens, and it's as unique to the person. But I think going back to the LinkedIn post, when you see people posting regurgitated shit from someone else, like it's not really doing them any good. It's not doing the platform any good. It's just sad stuff.
It is. And listen, LinkedIn and their Autobot, because I have posted about this, they need to do better, because I get the post or the notification all the time. Madison, you only have such and such views on this post. Tag somebody, say something else. LinkedIn, I hear what I said. Like if I wanted to tag somebody, I would have tagged them. Yeah. If I cared about all of LinkedIn seeing a certain post, then I would have wrote a letter to all of LinkedIn. I think we've gotten so consumed culturally, right? Because I think it's the masses that drive a lot of the iterations in some of these social media technologies. Yeah. But everybody doesn't care about how many people saw their post today. For me, I just operate with authenticity.
Exactly.
If people come across it, great. My content isn't even for everybody in the first place. So is there a way to turn that Autobot off? Because I've been looking.
Yeah, I
don't care what that Autobot has to say to me. I know.
I get the same thing where it's like tag somebody. Like if I wanted to talk to someone about this, I would have tagged them. Like don't, like if my post gets 100 views or it gets 20,000 views, that's on me. But it's not going to be anything that I do that's not authentically myself.
Correct. And eventually, I think it all neutralizes in the end anyway. I've noticed some very interesting patterns, and we're going to have to save this for another day because I don't want to rough everybody up today. But I've noticed some very interesting patterns. When I post something that I'm not going to say lacks substance, but there are posts that you can clearly read on my page that I had time today. There are some posts. There are others that are a couple lines. It's interesting, the stuff that gets the views and the stuff that somehow, there are some themes that I'm noticing. There are some patterns. When I talk about certain stuff, somehow a handful of people see it, and that's the important stuff. So we can spend another day on.
So let's go into a little bit about procurement. This is, I don't know if I would say it is a passion of mine. In my new role, I haven't experienced it as much as I have in past roles, just because of the function that I am a part of, or the function of my job. But procurement, I've always had a very love-hate relationship with. I think it's partly because I don't like being told what to do, and procurement people have very rigid rules, right? Because I mean, if for a good sense, because they don't want me going out and spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of the company's dollars without a little bit of oversight. But I guess, and maybe this is something that your guys' tool fixes. In my last job, one of the things that I really struggled with is I managed a team. I think it was like 20 engineers, roughly 20, maybe 18 engineers. But then also some product management, product strategist people. And like all of these people are millennial age. Like they were all a couple of years younger than me. I think there was one or two people that were a little bit older than me, but Windows just isn't a thing for that demographic as much as maybe what it was in the past, especially for engineers. Like I don't know many engineers right now that program on Windows computers. It's just not a thing. Right. And so when I went to my procurement team, they're like, well, we can get these, and we have a process of getting them through a certain sub vendor, and here is the price, but it's going to take 2 months to get every laptop. was like, yeah, but that's not going to work. This person's starting in 2 weeks. Sometimes I would have turnarounds of people who weren't employed and I hired them. They're like, I'll start tomorrow. I'm like, cool, right? How do you keep up with that speed in a digital age and still maintain a balance on what it is that you're paying for and your overall budget and things along those lines?
Yeah, I think first thing first is it starts with some kind of digitization initiative where you take, because there are a lot of procurement organizations that are still pushing paper when it comes time for someone to buy stuff. Mm-hmm. So getting all of the purchase event data electronic, I think, is the first step. Now, if you've already done that, we're now talking about how do we automate getting all of the data in a single place, getting it visible to end users, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, you have a system. I think when it comes to engineers, a lot of times those purchases are being made kind of off the grid, not necessarily in the purview of a centralized procurement organization. So I think even before raining on their parade and telling them what they should or shouldn't be able to buy, right, provided it's under a certain threshold, I think having the visibility first that would allow procurement organizations, executives to say, I have a very clear picture of all the spending that's going on in my org. And then from there, I'm sure you've had to do this a time or two in your life where you've had to go negotiate on behalf of your company to say, here's why maybe this brand over that, these features over that. But now we're having the strategic conversations because all the information is available to you. So I think all of those are at play.
And part of it for me was frustrating too, because they always wanted to make big purchases. They're like, oh, well, how many people are you going to have? Well, we have requisitions for hiring 20 people. But you and I both know that in this company, that usually lasts a couple months before they do a hiring freeze, right? So why would I want to purchase 20 computers right now? And so it was always this frustrating kind of back and forth. But then I think the other frustrating bit for me was around the fact that if I had the budget, they were the ones telling me what I could and could not spend. And so that bit was also frustrating, but there also wasn't a good tool that was somewhat self-service to say, hey, I can go in here, I can pick up a couple MacBooks. I know I'm going to have them within 3 to 5 business days, or without having to wait months and months to get each thing shipped in from whatever side vendor that wasn't Apple that we were buying stuff from.
That's an interesting point you made, because one of the big pieces of feedback I've gotten, particularly this season, is folks wanting to drive to a space where they can self-serve. I think there are organizations where all roads have to lead to procurement. I think all roads should anyway, but in terms of the end user experience, I want to feel like I have the ability to choose the brand, choose the item that I want for my personal business. And I think that's what's so fascinating right now about the procurement space is that when you look at the procure to pays in the market right now, when you look at some of the best in breed solutions, there are more than a few different avenues that someone could exercise to streamline the way that they buy stuff in a way that's satisfactory to the end user. And I don't think that's something that procurement was particularly known for, you know, when all this stuff first started, and even pre-COVID. So not that long ago, but we're starting to rethink it now, I think.
And when you say end user, you're talking about someone like myself that's not in procurement, that is more interested in just getting something that's going to work and getting it quickly.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because I think that was the big frustrating bit for me is there's no time to wait, I guess. And the trade-off between saving $100 across a 20-person team, there's more loss in lost productivity and more cost. And if I have someone coming in at an engineer level making 6 figures and they sit around and twiddle the thumb for 2 days, we've already lost well more than $100. But that's something that's not always brought into the scope of purchasing, to see that, okay, if we take too long, then that damages this output, which costs well more than $100 for 2 days.
I think you raise a great point. It's funny. So when you first started talking about procurement and you said you didn't like rules, I was going to ask if you really don't like rules or do you really just prefer speed? Because it's a lot of times quicker for someone like yourself to just go get the thing that you need because you know the unique needs of your business and why the laptop on the corporate catalog isn't necessarily going to do the job. And so it's interesting. It's interesting.
That is a good question. I think it's part rules and speed. I guess it's mostly around rules that don't make sense. And specifically going back to when I have the budget in my department, it's already been set aside for me to spend $50,000 on machines or whatever, $20,000 on machines. And then I have someone from procurement tell me I can't spend that money, right? Like that rule doesn't make any sense to me because they are not a part of that budgetary process. But also budgets, I think, are stupid anyways, but different conversation. But it's just like, it's that rule. Like, why are you putting something in my way of slowing down of me getting to the point of doing the work that I was hired to do?
So you bring up a great point because one of the things that I've been very happy to see this year, and this is kind of post the pandemic beginning, it can't any longer be about the dollars that we save here or there. The sell is absolutely around the speed of doing business, reducing cycle times, right? I've talked to organizations where in some cases it takes 2 to 5 weeks to get some laptops in the mail. I mean, by then, it's nice to save some money, but I think the value proposition of transitioning procurement into a space where we're talking about things like artificial intelligence, process automation, allowing end users to self-service, all of that accelerates the speed of doing business. And it's the companies that are moving super fast while moving super efficiently. Those are the ones that are going to have the leg up post-pandemic versus, yeah, I'm going to let y'all wait 5 weeks because we were able to save $100 per laptop.
Yeah.
Nobody has the time for that.
Absolutely.
Nobody has the time. So you raise a great point because it's the dollars are going to make themselves when the processes are streamlined and everyone's kind of on one united accord. I agree with you. I don't think it's fair if you've been given a budget and you've gotten the freedom to spend within that budget, but then somehow find a way to still get shut down when you buy stuff. That's tough. That creates tension in an organization.
Yeah. And it just thinking about it, like you being in sales and being in a digital company, it's an interesting dynamic because I work in product. And a lot of times when I work in product, I want to go out and talk to whoever our customers are. And in doing so, one thing you have to realize as a product person that when I go talk to a customer, if they are a customer or aren't a customer, that could affect your job as a salesperson, right? Like if I go out and say, hey, what do you guys think about these new features? And if I don't do it correctly, and they expect these new features to get released because they believe that they are amazing, then that in turn could affect you as the salesperson to that company because they come back and start yelling at you, hey, you guys showed me these features, where's it at?
Correct.
So it comes down, I guess, to the empathy and in understanding all of these weird dynamic relationships. And I think that a lot of people, and I know that in my time when I would get frustrated, I had a very kind of siloed and narrow look that I wasn't looking at, okay, what is this procurement person's job supposed to be? What is this the job that someone is supposed to have within sales? Or what is this job that someone is supposed to have within engineering? And how can we all work together and know that, hey, as a procurement person, I have pressures that says I have to keep the company within this budget. Or as a salesperson, I have pressures that I have to put food on my table and pay my bills, so I need to make sales, right? So if I do something that messes up that, or if I do something that messes up procurement, it all doesn't work together. But I think too many people view it in that siloed look.
They definitely do. And I'll be the first to say I'm all for the engineers getting whatever they want in life. But that siloed perspective oftentimes does come to life in that space because like I've got a job to do, this, that, and the third. I think we're all now in a place. I think the center of excellence, that concept is being reinvented post pandemic. I think everything that's purchased, particularly above a certain dollar threshold in an organization, is not just involving the procurement person who historically has been more of like a hall monitor, where it's like, no, you can't go to the bathroom right now, like go back to homeroom. Versus, like, I need y'all to understand what the true intent of procurement at XYZ organization is to be. And we are looking holistically at company-wide spend. We do have a direct impact on the bottom line. I think the way procurement is articulating its value these days is very refreshing, because all of the challenges that COVID has presented regarding needing to rethink primary and secondary suppliers, even how do we engage new suppliers to get the things that we need, because there have been shortages and businesses being shut down and all these things. All of that has kind of forced procurement into a new and evolved kind of spotlight where everybody's starting to talk about organization-wide spending, and there are new targets being set and new initiatives being undertaken. And so it's fun to watch work-life shift.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I'm going to end it on that, because that was a good segue to bring all of the conversation to a close. And LinkedIn has told me you're supposed to do these for like 15 to 20 minutes. But again, I don't really like rules. So we went over a little bit, but that's fine. So anybody who joined live, again, StreamYard, Shipyard, whatever I'm using for this, doesn't tell me if I have anyone live. So if you watched live, thank you very much. For all of those that watch this post, feel free to comment on the videos at myself or Madison, and we'll answer any questions, or just share comments or thoughts that you might have about the procurement space, engineering, life, the election, any of it. We'll chat. Thanks.
Bye.